Hey there. Still 12:30. Hope everybody's well. Not legal advice. I didn't say it enough. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. Go out, make your neighbors sign up, make them aware, etc. Hope everybody's well. I see. I was late, a little bit late. I lost track of time. I see. Again, my favorite all-time fan is Mr. StreamYard. He's here every day. John, the 1-1, Scott, the Silver Minecart, Jason, Gator Boy, Rondell, GEO or Geo, Renee, and Chad. Greetings. Hope everybody's well. In my efforts to keep you apprised of significant details, that's what we shall do. I think this is significant information. May be meaningless, but I thought it was significant information. It's now in the public domain. So I don't think it's fair that some people know and some people don't. So I bring it forward. That's because that's what I'm trying to do. Before I get started on whatever I just said, which may have sound like a bunch of gibberish, just wanted to talk about a couple things to kind of get in the mood, make everybody in the appropriate weekend mood. So true hospitality is making your guests feel like they're at home while feeling and wishing that your guests go home. You ever been there before? What do you get if you cross a dog and a calculator? A friend you can really count on. What did the Wi-Fi signal say to the other Wi-Fi signal on their very first date? I think we have a really good connection. And last but not least, and probably most applicable to me, I told my wife she should embrace all of her mistakes. She gave me this huge hug. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about, so the laughter is still going. I guess it stopped. So I can go on now because now you can all hear it. You've all kind of taken a deep breath and you're okay. So I'm glad I could humorize you today. To bring you up to speed, I am talking about GTII. For those of you who did not know that, who are here today, I'd be surprised if you didn't know, but if you didn't know, I'm talking about GTII, and we've been kind of going through the proceedings as they become public and information becomes public. So, and last and not least, we were covering the 20K disbursement, and then there was some more explanation about it. I gave credit to counsel for the receiver about having reached out. Other things I may have not have been equally complimentary. But I would say since whatever this series has gone on the last few weeks, that at least my rapport, my communication with the Receivers Council has improved. So if that's because we've pointed that maybe they could improve their communication, then that's great and that's wonderful. And again, I'm hopeful that anything helps us move forward to something that's positive. That's the goal, obviously, not just jerking around and not just kind of give you a behind the scenes look. It's like a behind the scenes Universal Studios tour, behind the scenes of what's going on in the legal side, explained by somebody who hopefully at least knows part of it, and not giving too much misinformation. So last we were talking about the 20K, and they reached out and they kind of gave some explanation. So yeah, and unfortunately, I think the way they are responding. I think the way that the Receivers Council is responding is they are, in a way, answering my questions, but the way they're doing it is they're kind of waiting for another shareholder to ask a similar question and then responding. And then I think they know by now that most people think that I am pro GTII shareholder being one, and that I will do what I think is in the best interest. And I think you guys are comfortable with that. and that information will end up in my hands. So I think that's kind of the way we're doing it. We're still doing it. I think it was last night, somebody asked a question about the 20K disbursement. And I think this is going to be a really sensitive area. So um, I before you talk about this with anybody else, before you post anything, I want you to kind of consider this because of the topic. And I'm going to preface this by saying, I welcome I will welcome and help any regulator at any point in time who wants to go after the bad actors, especially as to GTII. I've already said that as to Alpine, but I don't know them personally, but I had at least, I've done some investigation of this. So as to GTII, I'm happy to assist any regulator that goes against bad guys, and that would be great. I think that's if they're able to do that, it's great. I support that 100%, 2,000%, and I appreciate it. Any regulator that does that, I appreciate, and really, that's really important to retail traders. But I think it's careful and has to be a fine line that when they are doing their thing, that they don't also harm retail trade shareholders. And I think it's even more so in GTII, where the retail shareholders have already been harmed by the actions that apparently, according to the receiver's reports, by the actions of prior management. That's kind of the way the receiver's report sets it out. At least that's the way it looks like to me. So I think it's important that they get the bad guys, but it's also important, equally as important, that the innocent shareholders not be harmed. So I think that's a careful balance that has to be watched out. And I think once the regulators are intervening, it's important to kind of get out of the way, let them do their thing. And if in fact they want any assistance or cooperation or information, I'm sure they will reach out to anybody. But we don't want to, also become problematic to anybody. So we don't want to go chasing regulators down or anything like that, because I don't think that will really be helpful. So I think we really want to be cautious when it comes to letting regulators do whatever they want to do. So I'm going to leave that, and that will make some sense now as we kind of go through it. So somebody's asking, that's a pause. Now I'm looking at, somebody sent me, and by the way, if you sent me anything, unless you want your name disclosed, I'm not going to disclose your name. I don't think there's any reason for me to disclose somebody's name unless they want it, unless they want the publicity, and maybe somebody will buy them a cup of coffee or something. But somebody asked about the 20K and, some question like that. I don't really think the exact question is important. And they got a response last night. And so I'm going to read the response. It's pretty brief, and then I'll comment on it. So it's to the name of the person. I can't quite make out everything in the below, which is referring to the question, but I think I understand your question. There are certain proceedings that are confidential. I got permission yesterday from the SEC that I can disclose that it is to respond to the SEC subpoena. So the question asked about the 20K. So putting this together, the 20K was, and I guess the stipulation, asserts that it might have come out of money that's kind of on the David Reichman named pile, but they let him get 20K to respond to an SEC subpoena. That's what it appears to. Now, it doesn't say that anybody's a target, and we shouldn't presume this either. All we know is all we know by this email, and I think I've confirmed it beyond that today. But all we can say is that there was a SEC subpoena that was directed at David Reichman. I don't know if it was directed at him personally or as a agent of a company, or as to what matter. Is it even involving GTII? I've always thought along, before I kind of continue and break this down a little bit more, for the longest time, I thought that since Alpine, and to some of you that don't know, Alpine is prime broker, apparently a short position, an improper short position in this company. They've been involved in all kinds of trouble with the SEC, FINRA, the DTCCCC, and have gone up to the U.S. Supreme Court trying to claim that FINRA is not a constitutionally valid body, etc. They apparently these are the accusations, they did shenanigans as to GTII, as to the short. And the SEC was involved with Alpine. So I always believed for the longest time that even if the SEC had no interest in GTII, by opening up a garage and looking at files, they would see that GTII existed. So my expectation is that they have always been, or for a long time, they've been around. And, there's been a lot of people complaining about GTII for a lot of time. There's a lot of people who have lost a lot of money, at least on paper, not me, but a lot of people who've lost a lot of money on paper. And so I would have been surprised if the SEC had not been involved. And then I somehow learned of it at some point in time, that there was and I don't know what level they were looking, and I don't know if they were looking, by the way, because I don't have firsthand information, but kind of I understood that they were at least doing a peek. And I guess the way it goes, and again, I'm no SEC lawyer, I'm not a SEC investigator, I don't, but if you want to hire me, no, just kidding. So I don't really know the protocols. I'm also not an SEC attorney, so you can take that for whatever it's worth. But I think the way it goes on is they have like an initial investigation, and that could take quite some time, obviously. But during the initial investigation, I don't think they have subpoena powers, so they can just kind of check things out. But that could be going on for a year or two. So I believe probably, even when I started on this, they may have been investigating already, at least had some open investigation, or not long afterwards. So that could go on for quite some time. But that's kind of like, I think, an informal inquiry. Then I think the next step would be, and it doesn't mean that's happening here, I'm just trying to equate it with when a subpoena would be appropriate. If it was a formal investigation, and I assume then you would get notice. Again, I don't know any of this to be true, so I'm just talking about in general when somebody would have a right to issue a subpoena. That's all. But if somebody was doing a formal investigation, they would give notice to anybody, and if they wanted to find out information, could be related to them, could be related to a company, could be related to some other company. I mean, we don't know. In this case, I don't know, since I haven't seen the subpoena. Don't expect to see the subpoena unless somebody shows it. I don't know if it just, again, I don't know for what purpose, so there's no reason to speculate at that point in time as to what the purpose. All we know is that a subpoena has been issued. That's where the $20,000 was released, I guess, to deal with the SEC subpoena. I don't know, but I would expect if it advances and it's relevant to GTII at some future point, we would know. I think in one of the letters that we talked about GTII, and I think my understanding was until they got the SEC approval to be able to say that there was a subpoena issued, that the lawyers for the receiver could not disclose that the $20,000 was released for a subpoena, because they couldn't mention that until the SEC permitted them. So that was an intentional omission, because they weren't allowed to do that, as I understand that as of today. Just to give them credit for why that was vague, because they believed that wasn't allowed. Now they believe that the SEC gave them permission to disclose that actually a subpoena. And I think it's relevant, by the way. Makes sense that it would be disclosed because we've spoken about the characters management for quite some time. So the fact that one of them got a subpoena from the SEC is at least relevant, even if it's on a different matter, unrelated matter about a different company, because we don't know, but it's relevant. So I mentioned, even an initial inquiry is confidential. So most of the SEC proceedings, I think, as I mentioned in here, confidential. I think most of the SEC proceedings are confidential until maybe there's a resolution, final resolution. Initial inquiries, I believe, is confidential. If it's a formal investigation, I think it's confidential. So when it's referred to in this email as confidential, could be, and again, since it's a subpoena, since a subpoena was involved and it says it's confidential, then I am speculating that it has to be at least a formal investigation of something. And from this, it says the subpoena was issued confirmed by counsel, was issued to David Reichman, and that's why the money was released. So we don't know what is beyond that. I'm sure we will find out somewhere down the road. Obviously, I think this will advance in some way. Either it'll be over or it'll go some direction. And I put myself to be available to any regulator who wants to reach out, who needs information about this. Happy to help if anybody needs help. And if not, then that's fine too. And if they don't need any of our assistance, that's fine. We will stay out of the way. But if they require, then we're happy to help too. And again, remember, we are happy to get the bad guys, but we also are more or equally or more concerned that the shareholders who have been harmed already don't get harmed again, because that wouldn't be a great result, in my view. Especially after our attempts to kind of flesh this out, and I'm sure whatever has occurred in the litigation in Nevada can be used by anyone if it's relevant to their investigation. If it's not relevant to their investigation, then it's irrelevant. But so I think we'll hear more information in the future what that is, and when we hear more information about precisely what went on with that and what it involved, and if it's not, when it becomes public, because I don't think I will know before it becomes public. Maybe I will know before the crowd knows, but before it becomes public, like this is public, but I know not a lot of people know this yet, but it's public. It'll become more public as time goes on. When we know more information, we'll pass it on. Again, I'm thinking in the grand scheme of things. Again, we want the regulators to go after the bad guys. But we don't want them to go after the good guys, the shareholders. So let's not give them reason to do that. Let's not bother them. Let's let them do their work. And if they require our assistance, and we can do so. Everybody's, of course, able to do whatever they think's appropriate, but that's the kind of way I see it. And obviously, I report on this stuff pretty close in time. So you shouldn't be without current information. So you shouldn't feel like you don't know what's going on. And usually people act when they don't know what's going on, but I think you kind of know you're now up to date as to what's going on. It's part of the reason I'm doing this. So you kind of feel like you're in the loop. And whether it's good or bad, you kind of at least feel like you know. So that's the idea. So in my mind, I'm going to stay out of the way of the regulators. And if they want to inquire, then free. And we don't know if it even involves GTII. All we know is the person it was for. And that I think in the one of the GTI communications, they said that the release of the money would be in the interest of GTII. And what that means exactly, I don't know. It's kind of vague. But again, I'm sure that this stuff will play out in the near term, and we'll know a lot more about it. And it's brand new, so I don't think people have had a chance to kind of cogitate on it. But That's what the way it is. I don't know when the response to the subpoena is due. I haven't seen the subpoena. Doubt if I'll see the subpoena. Doubt if we'll see the subpoena. We may not see the response to the subpoena, and it may be on completely unrelated matter. So I think it was material that it be disclosed, which I'm doing. But what it means, we don't know yet, other than that it is to somebody that is obviously a major player in our particular matter. So I'm going to leave it at that. When I have more information about this, I will pass it on. Please take my suggestions to heart about not bothering the people looking into this. And although you're free to do whatever you want, of course. And I'm going to leave it there. So that's it. And I hope there is sound. If there's no sound, then raise your hand and do a handstand. I can't see anybody doing a handstand, so there must be sound. That being the case, I sure hope there's sound. But anyway, that being the case, good afternoon. Have a great day. 21 minutes and 7 seconds. Wow, for me, that's like 30 seconds. Anyway, have a great day, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll talk soon. Be well. And that's it. That's all, folks.